Her lover said she'd leave soon, so I made sure the house wouldn't last. I was at the hardware store when it happened, right in the middle of aisle 10, comparing two nearly identical brands of tile adhesive. It was one of those long, quiet afternoons where you don't expect anything out of the ordinary. My shopping list was in my back pocket, half-checked already: new screws for the deck railing, plumbing sealant, a case of light switches, and that stupid rubber mallet my wife kept insisting I buy after watching some DIY influencer hammer tiles with one. I was halfway through debating grout colors in my head when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. I've been getting a lot of spam calls lately, and I figured this was just another "your car's warranty is expired" scam. But something made me swipe it open. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe instinct. I brought the phone to my ear and said hello. That one word would open the door to a truth I was never meant to hear. The voice that answered didn't ask for a name. It didn't stammer. It didn't hesitate. Calm. Cold. Controlled. He said, "I'm your wife's lover." My brain didn't register it at first. I thought I'd misheard him. But he kept talking. "She's been cheating on you. For a while. I thought you should know." Just like that. No emotion. No apology. No dramatic build-up. My grip tightened on the phone, and I slowly lowered the bag of grout mix I was holding. I stood there frozen, surrounded by the quiet rustle of customers pushing carts and employees restocking shelves, while my heart pounded like it wanted out of my chest. The man on the line continued, his tone still calm, almost eerily neutral. "She's been planning to leave you. She just hasn't done it yet." I didn't say a word. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. It was like my mind had stepped into another room and slammed the door behind it. He went on. "I thought you should hear it from someone. You deserve that much, I guess." That sentence, "you deserve that much," was almost worse than everything else. Like he was trying to sound noble. Like cheating with another man's wife was some burden he had the decency to warn me about. There was no cruelty in his voice, but there was something worse. Pity. And I didn't even know what hurt more in that moment. The fact that someone else knew my wife more intimately than I did, or the fact that he sounded sorry for me. Like I was some clueless fool walking around in an apron, picking out backsplash samples for a woman who already had one foot out the door. He paused. I could hear him breathing, like he wanted to say more. Maybe explain. Maybe taunt. But instead, he dropped the final blow with all the softness of a knife sliding between ribs. "Don't tell her we talked. Not a word. Don't try anything. Don't act brave. If you tell her about this call, I'll make your life worse than it already is." Then he hung up. Just like that. No explanation. No name. Just a voice and a threat, and the shattering realization that everything I thought was solid might already be rotting at the core. I didn't move for a full minute. I just stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, like if I waited long enough he'd call back and tell me it was all a mistake, that he dialed the wrong number, that it was some cruel prank. But the silence in my ear told me this was no prank. It was a warning and a challenge. The store lights buzzed faintly above me. Someone's kid ran down the aisle behind me giggling. The smell of lumber and PVC glue drifted through the air. The world moved on like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I walked down the rest of that aisle like I was wearing someone else's shoes. I found myself staring at bags of cement, thinking about whether I'd ever seen a real sign. Anything. Some slip-up. But the truth was, I hadn't. She still kissed me on the cheek when I brought her coffee in the morning. Still texted me to grab almond milk. Still laid next to me every night like nothing was wrong. And now some stranger, someone who knew her intimately, was telling me it had all been a lie. I made it to the checkout somehow. Loaded the cart. Paid. Nodded at the cashier like I was fine. Like the sky hadn't fallen quietly into the back of my skull. The drive home was a blur. I remember stopping at a red light and staring straight ahead, both hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than I needed to. The stranger's words echoed in my head like a looped recording. "She's been planning to leave you. Don't tell her we talked." I pulled into the driveway and sat there in the car for a full minute. Her car was parked neatly beside mine. Same spot as always. Our house, well, the house looked the same. Front porch light still flickering, just like she kept reminding me to fix. I stared at that flicker and thought, maybe that's me. Still working. Still fixing. Still believing it's worth it. But now, I didn't know what I was fixing anymore. And I didn't know who I was fixing it for. That night, I didn't say a word about the call. I came in, said dinner smelled great. She kissed me like she always did, quick, distracted, a little lazy. I told her I picked up the supplies she wanted for the bathroom. She smiled and said something about how it was finally starting to feel like our home. And I nodded. I nodded and smiled and didn't say a single thing. Because whatever this house was supposed to be, I was no longer sure I was part of it. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay next to her listening to the gentle rhythm of her breath, while mine stayed stuck somewhere between panic and disbelief. Her back was turned to me like usual, legs curled slightly under the blanket. The same as always. And that was the strangest part. It was all the same. But now it felt different. That call had cracked something open in me. I wasn't sure what I believed yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't unhear what I heard. I couldn't unknow that voice. I couldn't ignore the sentence, "She's been planning to leave you." Even if it was a lie, I had to know for sure. So the next morning, I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I just watched. I watched the way she scrolled through her phone under the table while sipping her coffee. The way she tilted the screen ever so slightly away from me. I watched how she smiled when she typed, then quickly wiped the smile off when I looked up from my eggs. I didn't say anything. I just stored it, like filing evidence. That week, I started noticing more things. I paid closer attention to her schedule. She started coming home later from work than usual. Sometimes by an hour. Sometimes two. She always had a reason. Traffic was terrible, or I stopped at the store, or Amanda from HR needed to vent. But there were no receipts, no groceries in hand, and Amanda from HR used to be someone she couldn't stand. Her phone, once casually left on the nightstand or coffee table, now followed her everywhere. Even into the bathroom. She used to show me memes or screenshots of dumb celebrity drama. Now she barely mentioned what was on it. And when I passed behind her while she was texting, she'd lower the screen or turn it face down without missing a beat. She started dressing nicer too. Not dramatically, just differently. A little more perfume. A new blouse I hadn't seen before. Makeup on a Sunday when we weren't going anywhere. And when I asked, she shrugged it off, said she was just trying to feel more put together. But something about it felt rehearsed. Like she had that answer locked and loaded before I even asked. I didn't want to believe it. I really didn't. I told myself I was overreacting. That maybe the guy who called me was lying, trying to mess with my head. Maybe he had the wrong husband, the wrong wife. Maybe he made it all up. But doubt doesn't sit quietly. It spreads like ink in water, touching everything. And soon, every conversation felt like a performance. Every kiss felt half-hearted. Every compliment I gave her landed with a polite smile, not the sparkle she used to give me. I started paying attention to her location sharing. We had it on by default, something we'd done when she once locked her keys in the car years ago. She never turned it off. Until 2 nights later, when it suddenly went dark. I asked her if her phone died. She said, "Oh yeah, it must have." I didn't even notice. The next morning it was back on. But that flicker, just that one unexplained blackout, sat heavy in my chest. I started checking the bank account more carefully. Not for big things. I wasn't expecting hotel charges or dinner receipts. I was looking for the little stuff, unfamiliar apps, cash withdrawals, new patterns. And sure enough, a couple things popped up. A rideshare payment from a city 10 miles away. A small charge from a restaurant we'd never been to. A Target purchase at 10:41 p.m. on a Tuesday when she said she was home early. I didn't say anything. I just kept watching. The part of me that used to make excuses for her had gone quiet, replaced by something colder, something surgical. I was no longer trying to save the relationship. I was studying it, trying to understand when it had shifted, when I had stopped being her person and someone else had taken my place. The hardest part wasn't the suspicion. It was pretending I didn't suspect anything. I still made her coffee in the mornings. Still reminded her to take her vitamins. Still kissed her on the forehead before bed. I played the part. Because if she really was hiding something, then I needed her to believe that I was still the same man who adored her blindly. And the worst thing? I still did. In some twisted, bruised part of my heart, I still wanted it to be wrong. I still wanted to be crazy. Because being wrong would mean she still loved me. Being crazy meant she was still mine. But more and more, I started to realize I wasn't crazy. I was waking up. And the picture was coming into focus. A new one. A real one. And in that picture, I was standing alone, holding a hammer, covered in drywall dust, building a future for someone who had already moved on. She still laughed at my jokes, still rubbed my shoulders when I looked stressed, still sent me videos of cute dogs. But now, none of it felt like love. It felt like guilt. Maintenance. A well-oiled lie. I'd catch her looking at me sometimes, studying me, like she was trying to figure out what I knew. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't sure if I was suspicious, and that told me more than any words ever could. If nothing was happening, she wouldn't have to wonder what I knew. But she was wondering, and wondering meant guilt. One night, I heard her whispering in the hallway, phone in hand, voice low. I walked into the kitchen loud enough for her to hear, and she snapped to attention, ending the call like she'd touched fire. I asked who it was. She said her sister. I asked if everything was okay. She said yes, and her smile was just a little too wide, her laugh just a little too forced. So I nodded, said goodnight, and filed away another piece. I still hadn't told anyone. Not friends. Not family. Not even my best friend, who'd known me since childhood. This was something I needed to carry alone for now. Because the more I watched, the more I realized that the man on the phone hadn't been lying. He didn't have to convince me. She was doing that herself. One look. One excuse. One accidental lie at a time. I didn't know how long it had been going on. Weeks? Months? A year? Maybe longer. But I did know one thing: he was right. She was going to leave me. The house had always felt like a shared dream. That was the lie I told myself. We started the renovation 2 years ago with rolled-up sleeves and matching smiles, the kind of energy couples put into a fresh start. It wasn't our first home, but it was the one we planned to grow old in. I remember the way her eyes lit up when we found it, just a plain, weathered two-story on the edge of a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy. It needed work, a lot of it, but she saw potential. She saw a future. I saw a place we could build with our own hands. What I didn't realize back then was that the future she saw didn't include me, and the hands she wanted were mine, not to build with her, but for her. At the time, her parents offered to help with the down payment. A big one. I resisted at first, said I didn't want to take money from anyone, but they insisted. Said it was a wedding gift, just a little jumpstart to help us build something great. When we sat down with the notary, they explained it would be easier to put the deed under her mother's name, just for now, some legal thing about property taxes and insurance, they said. Once the work was done, it would be signed over to my wife officially. It didn't matter to me. I trusted them. I trusted her. I wasn't thinking like a man building an escape route. I was thinking like a husband. So we poured money into it. I gutted the kitchen by hand, hauling out rotten cabinets and drywall that crumbled like paper. She picked the colors, the tile, the faucet styles. I did the cutting, sanding, nailing, lifting. I took extra shifts to pay for materials. We skipped vacations and I sold my old motorcycle just to cover the new furnace. Every square foot of this house had a piece of me in it, whether it was sweat, splinters, or the months I spent climbing through the crawlspace trying to rework 20-year-old plumbing. But now, everything about that setup started to feel different. Off. Manipulative. Not all at once, but gradually, in flickers. I began replaying old conversations in my head. Her mother calling it our gift to her. Her father nodding slowly when I joked about finally owning something bigger than my toolbox. Her way of saying my house instead of our home, like it was a habit she never bothered correcting. I looked up the property records late one night when she fell asleep early, just to see it in writing. And there it was, her mother's name. Not ours. Not mine. I stared at that screen for a long time, not because I was surprised, but because I finally let myself believe what had been right in front of me for months. She never planned to share it. Not the deed, not the exit, not the future. She was letting me build a life I wouldn't get to live in. I kept checking through old text chains, emails, digital receipts. Every payment came from our joint account, but every invoice was addressed to her. Every contractor we hired, every permit pulled, everything tied back to her email. All of it so casual, so quiet, so seamless. She played the long game without ever having to lie to my face. It was all in the details I never thought to check. She didn't hide it because she didn't have to. I was too busy working, fixing, building. Too busy trying to be the man she could depend on, while she turned me into a stepping stone. I began to wonder how much of this had been planned. If it was just opportunistic, or if the whole thing had been designed from the beginning. If she stayed with me long enough to get the house finished, then moved on. If that was the plan from the moment we tore up the floors and dreamed out loud about where the couch would go. Maybe she didn't know at first. Maybe the decision came later. But somewhere along the way, she stopped picturing us in this house and started picturing herself. Alone. Or worse, with him. And now, I had nothing. No deed. No claim. No fallback. I ran the numbers in my head over and over, what I'd spend in time, and labor, and money. There was no reimbursement for this kind of loss. No line item in a divorce settlement for emotional theft. Even if she left, even if I walked away clean, she'd keep the house. The foundation I laid. The walls I framed. The roof I patched with my own hands last fall during that early cold snap. That was the part that stuck with me. She was going to get everything. I wasn't just being left. I was being used. She still acted the same. Made jokes about the paint color in the hallway being a little too green. Asked if we should change it. I said I liked it. She shrugged, said it was just a wall. We could always redo it. She didn't know I'd already started seeing every corner of the house differently. Not as a home, but as a transaction. And she still hadn't left. Still no confrontation. No conversation. Just quiet distance and careful timing. Like she was waiting for something. That's when it started to sink in. She was waiting for me to finish. To finish the work. To hang the last light fixture. To seal the grout. To paint the final coat on the upstairs hallway. She needed the house complete. And until then, she'd keep playing the part. I realized I wasn't the husband anymore. I was the contractor. And the clock was ticking. There was no outburst. No plan scribbled on paper. Just a quiet decision that took shape while I was standing in the middle of the master bedroom, holding a box of hardwood flooring that cost more than my first car. I looked at the price tag and thought, why? Why give her the finish she wanted when she never planned for me to stay long enough to enjoy it? That was the moment it started. I returned the expensive flooring and bought something that looked similar on the surface but was hollow underneath, low grade, the kind that warps with humidity and creaks even when it's new. I laid it carefully. I still measured twice. Still made the seams tight. But I knew what I was doing. I wasn't building durability. I was building decay. Every choice after that came easier. The insulation in the attic was thinner than code required, but I spread it evenly so it wouldn't raise suspicion. The grout in the downstairs bathroom looked clean, but I mixed it with too much water so it would start cracking within a year. I skipped waterproof sealant behind the tiles. The piping in the kitchen island, I intentionally tightened just a little too far, knowing it would slowly shift under pressure until a leak formed. Not enough to flood anything, not fast, but enough to make repairs expensive and annoying after I was gone. I didn't sabotage anything visibly. I didn't leave loose nails or obvious gaps. The surface would shine. The photos would look beautiful. But underneath? Rot, stress, shortcuts, perfectly camouflaged failures. She hovered less during the projects now. Gave me more space. Maybe she thought I was just focused. Maybe she took my silence as compliance. She still praised the work when she saw it, still posted progress photos on her social media. She told her friends I was killing it with the reno, how lucky she was to have a husband who could do everything himself. That word, husband, burned every time she used it like it still meant something. I nodded when she said it, smiled when she shared the photos. But my hands were doing a different kind of work behind the drywall. The materials changed, too. I stopped shopping at the good supplier and started buying from warehouse overstock. Cheaper paint that peeled after one summer. Electrical boxes that wouldn't hold up under a real load if she ever tried to run a space heater and a hairdryer at the same time. Even the crown molding, I installed it flush, but skipped the adhesive, just tiny brad nails that wouldn't hold past the first humidity spike. I didn't just sabotage the house. I started rerouting the money. Every time I bought supplies, I'd spend less than budgeted and quietly pocket the difference. I opened a separate account under a private banking app. Transferred funds in small increments, never enough to trigger suspicion. Returned items for cash and stashed it. I even told her I was running into delays so she wouldn't expect fast progress, which gave me more time to find the cheapest, most unreliable options I could get away with. I knew where to cut corners without making it obvious. That's what made it work. I wasn't trying to destroy the house. I was trying to give it exactly what it deserved. Just enough to pass inspection. Just enough to make her feel proud for a little while. And then, slowly, piece by piece, it would betray her the way she betrayed me. Not all at once. That would be too easy. The real satisfaction would come later, when door frames started separating from the walls, when the paint began to flake, when the heating bills doubled because the attic leaked warmth like a sieve. She'd be left with a house that looked like a dream, but only on the surface. A facade, just like the marriage she pretended to keep while building her escape. She never asked about the budget. She never checked receipts. She never offered to help anymore. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe she was just too busy texting him. I stopped caring. The renovation became my performance. A slow-motion farewell. My evenings were filled with the sound of tools, music in my headphones, and the kind of silence you get when you know everything around you is a lie, but you're the only one who can hear it breaking. There were nights I stayed up late sanding cabinets while she was already in bed. I'd pass the bedroom door and hear her laugh softly to herself, probably on the phone, probably with him. I never stopped to listen. I didn't need to. Her body language said more than her words ever could. She barely touched me anymore, except when she needed help lifting something or wanted to pretend we were still close. I played along, gave her the same hollow smile I gave the cheap cabinets I hung in the guest bathroom. Sometimes I imagined her reaction a year from now, standing in the kitchen when the faucet starts leaking through the cabinet, or watching the paint peel off the ceiling she chose with such confidence. I pictured her blaming the materials, the weather, the age of the house, anything but herself. She would never guess I had been one step ahead the whole time. That while she was planning her exit, I was drawing blueprints for her disappointment. She wanted the house. She could have it, but not the version she imagined. Not the dream she stole from me while pretending we were still partners. I would finish the job. I would see it through to the last screw, the final coat of paint, the staged reveal she thought would mark the start of her new life. She wouldn't know it, but she'd be walking into a beautiful, slow-burning failure, built with precision, wrapped in silence, and paid for with the loyalty she buried months ago. The house was nearly finished by then. Every room had been touched, every wall patched and painted, every surface sealed with the illusion of permanence. The kind of polish that sells well in photos, that makes neighbors smile politely when they visit. The kind of finish that gives the owner a false sense of pride until the cracks begin to show. I had spent weeks on the final push, caulking, sanding, trimming, making it all look just right. She brought her friends over for walkthroughs, beaming as they complimented the transformation. She praised me openly, as if none of this was unraveling quietly behind her back. By that point, we were almost entirely disconnected behind closed doors. We didn't argue, didn't fight. That would have required emotional contact. What we had was worse: mechanical kindness, obligatory smiles. She thanked me for little things, carrying boxes, installing lights, but there was no warmth in it. Just the automatic pleasantries of people who used to be in love and now shared a space out of habit. I didn't press. I didn't challenge. I wanted her to feel safe, to think I was still asleep. But inside, I was already gone. The last project was the upstairs hallway and the master bath. That space had always been her obsession. She'd saved a dozen mood boards for it, sent me pictures at midnight of spa-style tubs and vanity mirrors with LED backlighting. It was the crown jewel in her fantasy of the house. She wanted elegance, so I gave her what looked like it. Behind the mirror, I cut just a little too wide into the drywall. I patched it, but I didn't reinforce it. The grout on the floor tiles? Just enough sealer to make it through a winter, no more. The overhead lights? Wired in a way that would flicker under humidity once the attic warmed up in summer. She'd never suspect it until it was too late. It was a Thursday evening when it happened. I was finishing up the caulk line under the edge of the hallway baseboard, crouched low with a trim knife and a rag in my hand. She had just stepped into the bedroom with her phone, talking in that soft voice she used when she didn't want me to overhear. I didn't think anything of it at first. She took calls all the time in that room. But then I caught her reflection in the full-length mirror on the inside of the closet door. She didn't see me. She thought I was still downstairs. She was facing the window, one hand on her hip, the phone pressed to her ear. Her voice wasn't anxious. It was calm, measured, almost tired. I didn't hear the full conversation, but I heard enough. "I'm going to end it soon," she said. A pause, then quieter. "It's been over for a long time. He just doesn't know it yet." Another pause, then a soft laugh. I know. I need to finish this. Once it's done, I'll talk to him. I promise. I just can't deal with the drama right now." She was silent for a while, then nodded and said something I didn't catch. Her voice dropped further. "He still thinks everything's fine. It's easier that way. I'll be out before it turns messy." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just stayed crouched at the end of the hallway, one hand resting on a tube of caulk, eyes fixed on the wood grain in the baseboard like it was a prayer. My heartbeat slowed. My mind didn't race. It settled, not because I was shocked, but because the confirmation I'd been waiting for had finally arrived. She wasn't conflicted. She wasn't hesitant. She was planning the break like you plan a trip. Wait until the timing works. Avoid confrontation. Pack your bags when he's not looking. Her tone held no guilt, no sadness, just relief. I kept working. I wiped the edge of the baseboard clean, stood slowly, stretched my back, and walked down the stairs as if I hadn't just heard my marriage end in a whisper. She stayed upstairs. When she came down an hour later, she asked if I wanted tea. I said sure. She made it just the way I liked it, set the mug in front of me, and sat on the other end of the couch scrolling her phone. I sipped the tea, nodded my thanks, and kept watching the news on mute. It could have been any night from the past year. But now I knew for sure. She wasn't staying because of love. She wasn't conflicted. She was finishing the chapter, just as I was. The next morning, she left early for a weekend with her sister. Or that's what she said. I didn't ask questions. I used the time to touch up the last items on the list. Routed the sink, painted the trim she complained about, mounted the final mirror in the hallway. I took pictures of everything, before and after shots, angles, progress. Not for her. For me. Evidence of the work I put in, the beauty I built that wouldn't last. I walked through each room slowly that Sunday evening, imagining her giving the grand tour to her friends, glowing with pride. And I thought about how it would feel when the first cracks began to show. Not just in the walls, but in her certainty. She had spent months pretending I didn't know. She thought she was in control. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't working for her anymore. I was working for closure. The moment she hung up that call, the act was done. The project was done. And so was I. It ended the same way it began, quietly. No screams, no slammed doors, no flurry of accusations. Just stillness, and the sound of her voice wrapping itself around a well-rehearsed speech she had probably repeated in her head for weeks. She waited until everything was done, until the final coat of paint in the bathroom had dried, until I had wiped down the last windowsill and organized the tools in the garage, until the vision she had for her dream home was fully realized, crafted with the hands of a man she never planned to keep. She chose a Tuesday evening. She cooked something simple, pasta with basil and a little too much garlic, like she always did when she was trying to keep things light. We ate quietly at the table. I knew what was coming. She didn't know that I knew. She probably thought she was doing me a kindness by waiting until the work was done. That giving me one last normal dinner was some kind of mercy. She cleared her throat, pushed her plate slightly away, and leaned forward just a bit, elbows grazing the wood, fingers twined together like she was about to break bad news to a stranger. She said she'd been thinking about us for a while, that she'd felt things changing, that it wasn't one thing, just a slow drift she couldn't stop. She told me she loved me, but not in the way she used to. She said it like she expected it to land softly, like a slow goodbye would hurt less than a sharp one. I watched her eyes while she talked. They didn't flicker. She wasn't scared, just relieved, like she was finally passing a weight she had carried too long. I let her finish. I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask why. And when she paused, waiting for me to speak, I just looked at her for a moment, then said calmly, I know. She blinked. Not fast, but like someone who had just misheard something they weren't prepared for. Her lips parted slightly, a question caught in her throat. I held her gaze. He called me, I said. I watched her go pale. Her jaw shifted like she was trying to clench it and keep control of her face, but she failed. Her shoulders dropped half an inch, and for the first time in months, she looked vulnerable. Not guilty, just exposed. She opened her mouth, maybe to deny it, maybe to explain. But I didn't give her the space. I knew when I was at the hardware store, I continued. He told me everything. He said you'd been cheating, that you planned to leave. He warned me to stay silent. Said there would be consequences if I spoke. But I already knew by then. I just didn't want to believe it. She looked away, eyes on the kitchen floor. Her hands were still locked in front of her, but her fingers had gone white from how hard she was gripping them. Her voice came out thin and brittle when she finally spoke. Why didn't you say anything? I didn't answer right away. I stood up, walked to the sink, poured myself a glass of water. I took my time. Then I turned and leaned against the counter, glass in hand, and said, because I wanted to finish the house. That sentence landed like a stone in the room. She flinched slightly, just barely. I didn't need to explain what I meant. Somewhere deep down, she understood. The house was never just a house. It was a record of trust, of time, of belief. And now, it was a monument to her betrayal. I told her she could keep it. I wouldn't fight her. The house was legally hers. I knew that. Her parents knew that. Everyone but me had probably known that from the beginning. I told her I hoped it brought her everything she wanted. Comfort, freedom, a fresh start. But I also told her one more thing, that no matter how perfect it looked now, it wouldn't stay that way for long. I said it without malice, without anger, just as a fact. Like telling someone that a vase is already cracked beneath the glaze, and one day the pieces will shift. She didn't respond. She just sat there, blinking slowly, as if each second pulled her further away from whatever version of this conversation she had prepared for. Maybe she thought I'd cry. Maybe she thought I'd scream. Maybe she hoped I'd beg her to stay. But I didn't give her any of that. I didn't want her to have the satisfaction of feeling needed. I wanted her to feel exactly what I had felt the day he called me powerless. I went upstairs, packed a small bag. A few clothes, my laptop, the documents I cared about. I left the tools. Left the shared photos on the shelves. Left the coffee mug she bought me for our anniversary that said, "Build together." It didn't mean anything now. Not after the way she'd built her exit. Before I left, I stood at the front door for a moment, hand on the knob, listening to the stillness of the house. I heard the soft whir of the fridge, the tick of the living room clock, the faint creak of the floorboard near the hallway that I deliberately installed without shims. It would only get worse with time. She stayed in the kitchen. She didn't follow. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she knew the performance was over. I walked out without another word. No parting shot. No dramatic farewell. Just the cold, clean sound of the door closing behind me, and the knowledge that she got exactly what she wanted. A house. A fresh start. Her freedom. But not the version she expected. Would you finish a home for someone planning to leave you?